Hexagon is a technology company, unleashing the power of autonomy to measure and improve what industry needs most. Productivity, efficiency, quality, lower cost, less waste. We believe that industry can save our world, that it can be the solution instead of the problem, and that global commerce is the path to a sustainable planet. Hexagon is intent on making this a reality by putting data to work autonomously to measure progress and improve outcomes. Our technologies digitally capture and measure all things in all places. They position, track, and navigate anything. They dimensionally design whatever you want to create, from facilities to evacuation plans. Simulate billions of real-world scenarios. Deliver location intelligence about anything, anywhere. Together, these technologies fuse the physical world with the digital. They empower us to make that giant leap beyond automation to autonomous. Because autonomy is data doing its best work. Yes, it will drive our cars, yet it will do so much more. It will carefully protect our citizens and nations, operate complex assets and facilities reliably, accurately construct buildings and infrastructure, manufacture products and goods intelligently, responsibly produce from our mines to our farms. Data will do all of these things autonomously. When industry embraces this, sustainable outcomes will follow. Hexagon, empowering an autonomous future.
My name is Mike Haywood. I'm a partner at Woodfine Solicitors. We're proud members of the Silverstone Technology Cluster, and hopefully this time next year we will celebrate the annual conference in real life. We support businesses in relation to the full range of legal needs here.
Hello, I'm Claire Down. I'm also a partner at Woodfines and I specialise in residential conveyancing.
We wish all members a great deal of success in the coming year.
Welcome everybody. My name is Pim van Baarselen and I'm CEO for the Silverstone Technology Cluster. We have a very exciting event lined up for you today, but before handing over to our compare Helen, I wanted to share an announcement with you. I'm very pleased to announce that Be The Business, the BEI-supported business growth organization, has selected Silverstone Technology Cluster to be a UK Trailblazer project partner. What this will mean is that we will be able to deliver a lot more genuine business growth support, not just for our members, but for all the advanced engineering, electronic and software companies in our cluster area, and all for free. This project will not only raise our profile with the UK government, but will further put us on the map with the largest corporates in the UK. Be The Business already works with the likes of BAE Systems, Rolls-Royce, Siemens and Amazon. And for the STC to be selected as a Trailblazer partner, I believe is a great testament to the work that we've been doing over the last 4 years. I would like to thank our founding members Barclays, Buckinghamshire Council, EMW, Grant Thornton, Hexagon, Silverstone Park and South Northamptonshire Council whose investment in the STC from the beginning have allowed us to put the resource in place to deliver this ambitious program, which will aim to launch at the beginning of 2021. Emma Cooper from Be The Business will expand on our new partnership in her presentation later. With that, I'd now like to hand it over to Helen Wild to guide us through today's event. Helen has had a stellar career with senior roles in companies like Lloyds Bank, T-Mobile, and Parcelforce, and is currently Managing Director of East Coast Trains. We are lucky to have Helen as part of the STC's Gender Equality and Diversity Committee, and I'm delighted she has joined us today. Helen, over to you.
Congratulations on the Trailblazing Award for 2021. I think that's so well deserved for you all, and a marvellous accolade. If we're all sitting in an auditorium, I'd ask you all to clap. But if we just do that for the moment, well done, Silverstone. That's another win and a great outcome. So well done. Well done to everybody involved. It's now my great pleasure to hand over to John Corbett from Barclays Bank. John's had an incredible career with Barclays, over 20 years experience in corporate and business banking, and he is the Director of Corporate Banking there. He's also on the board of Silverstone Park and of SEMLEP, and he's now going to do the introduction to Silverstone Technical Cluster. So welcome, John, and I hand over to you.
Good morning, and thanks, Helen, for the introduction, and welcome as well to the third, somewhat delayed annual STC conference. As Helen alluded to, I'm Regional Director at Barclays and also board member and co-founder of the Silverstone Technology Cluster. Those who have attended in the past previous conferences will perhaps recall that I've been the MC on the last couple of occasions. So I was quite relieved to hand the baton over to Helen for this event, which is somewhat different in terms of how it will be run. But when we spoke about that, actually, Kieron Salter, who many of you will know and speaks later, said that I was the STC's very own version of Bruce Forsyth. I'm not sure whether that was a compliment or not, but so I think Pim felt he had to give me a little bit of a slot, if nothing else, just to say nice to see you nice in a virtual way. Doesn't quite work the same, does it? But anyway, so whenever we have these conferences, I always look back and I reflect on when Roz and I first discussed the idea of a report and a study, which was the evolution of high performance technology in motorsport that we commissioned, and we weren't really sure where that would lead to. And when we had the findings of the study, it was a bit of a moment as well for me and Roz, where we said, well, what next? And we determined at that point to set up the organisation to support the findings, but we had no idea of the momentum and progress that would build and the extent that it has indeed progressed. And it's a testament to Pim and the team of what has been achieved, but it also highlights the importance of the role the STC has in supporting business and the economy within our region. And I say each year how amazed I am with the progress we've made. And this year, against the backdrop of the challenges of the pandemic, the role the STC has played has been ever more important. And indeed, if we look at the year ahead, it will be ever more important as well. And when I look not just at the membership of the STC, but the activities we've seen throughout this year, we've facilitated business engagement with government and MPs. We've supported the Kickstart scheme. We've facilitated a response to help address some of the COVID-19 challenges within the healthcare sector. We've held a series of online forums and webinars on a range of topics, all really well attended with fantastic feedback as well. I know we're here from Charlotte from Make UK later on, but also we've had comment from Make UK around the drive and spirit for the STC is bringing to the region and the sectors that it supports. We facilitated collaboration and innovation, leading to business success, which is also helping our communities. And we've seen, as I've alluded to, a grow membership base. And Pim's mentioned Be The Business new initiative in his opening, which has real potential to take us to a new level. So huge amounts to be really proud of in terms of what we've achieved and what we've delivered. And I say it each year, though, the next year will be our most important, and perhaps now there's never been a truer word said in terms of what we look forward to. I can remember Rob Lewis from Total Sim at one of our board gatherings. He said how he was an engineer, and as such he liked to identify problems and find ways to solve them or fix them. And with what we're facing in the year ahead, we've got a few challenges, but we've also got some great opportunities with the way that the landscape is changing. And with the drive, energy and innovative spirit that we see from businesses across the STC and the Silverstone Technology Cluster, we just need to solve those issues. and the STC has a really important role to play in that. I know you've got some great speakers lined up, some great sessions, some great topics running. So hope you enjoy the day, and I think I'll be speaking to you again later. Thank you.
Good to be here with you all. As the main sponsor of the STC conference, just prepared a few slides to give you an update on what we're doing at Silverstone Park. I'm Ros Bird. I'm the Commercial Director of Silverstone Park and the Chair of Silverstone Technology Cluster. I'm really looking forward to another day of inspiring discussion on this new format that we're all having to get used to. So before that, just a few slides by way of an update on what's been happening at Silverstone Park. So as you probably all know, Silverstone Park is the land around the track, and MEPC is developing that land. We've got 2.1 million square feet of planning consent, and we've got 400,000 square feet built and let on site. And some of the companies that are our occupiers on site are in this slide here. You all know them well. Some of them will be on this in this conference today. And they're companies that maybe started in motorsport, but have then since diversified and now do a lot of work with automotive, defence, aerospace, medical devices, some branching into PPE, some with specialist facilities. And part of the reason that companies come to Silverstone Park, it's not just the great Silverstone name and the central location, but it's the business community that they're joining and the business networking opportunities that we've set up since we've been developing the park and looking after the businesses that are based at Silverstone. We have senior team lunches and networking business events, and we host leading events on the site as well. And obviously would like to get more of that going again next year when we get back into normal times. We've been trying to do what we can this year with the online networking, and obviously the STC's done a lot of webinars and the like. It'd be nice to get back together again and see people face to face, hopefully next year. And the other bit of the work that we do with the people, the reason that companies like Silverstone Park is because we're very conscious that businesses are competing to attract and retain the best people. And we know that if you organise events before work, after work and at lunchtime, sports and social, charity events, bit of social networking, that really is valued by employees, and it's something that helps businesses on the park to attract and retain all the best people. Another thing that has come to our attention and we've done a lot of work on over the last few years is the skills agenda. We know that for companies in the audience today and the ones at the park have said that that's the biggest concern they have, you know, the skills pool and continuing to get that flow of bright people coming through that want to work, the right attitude for the businesses at the park and in the cluster. And so because it's top of our business community's agenda, we've done a lot of work with schools in the local area, coding clubs for primary schools, and then this Inspiration for Innovation programme that you've got some images here for the secondary schools. And it's been really important for those young people to hear from representatives of our business community talking in their schools about the different aspects of the working life, the fact that employers are looking for young people that have got the right attitude, and really bringing to life the different projects that our businesses are working on, the different industries that they're working in, when those young people have had the chance to come and have a look round at Silverstone Park. And that's something that we're continuing to do. We're working on now with Gaia Innovation. We're putting together a new schools programme for 2021, where a lot of the presentations will be online, and then will be live question and answer sessions through media like Zoom. So beginning of the year, before the pandemic sort of struck us, we thought it was right to review our brand and how we present ourselves, and wanted to change that to truly reflect the new brand essence of Silverstone Park that's evolved over the last 7 years, where now we would say that companies come to a place where they can grow and succeed and have that sense of belonging to the community. It's more than just your business in a building and your staff driving to and fro. It's very much about how can we collaborate and bring business opportunities to all of the companies that move to Silverstone Park. So despite the pandemic, we have continued this year to build our latest speculative development. Here's an image now of the detached units in that development. These are 40, 30 and 20,000 square footers. And we've carried on with that during the year, stayed pretty much on programme, and they will be completed by the end of the year. And we only have 4 left available. All the others have either completed or are near to completing, with some great new companies and some companies that are growing at the park. So this is the availability. If you're interested, please do get in contact with me or my colleague Ruth Williams. We are conducting viewings and able to negotiate heads of terms for those buildings, so let us know if you're interested. There's a bit of news really, and something to ponder on and think about and work out what we should be doing, how we can help the companies that are moving to the park into these specialist facilities. So when we built the new units, and as we've worked with Hexagon with the metrology facility and with Rob Lewis at Total Sim on the sports engineering hub, we've been conscious of the fact that companies now moving to the park are setting up specialist facilities for advanced engineering. And I think this is a real sort of testament to the activity, the business activity in the area of the cluster, and sort of, cutting edge facilities that the companies like yours really require. And that's growing. So this sort of suite of specialist facilities now at Silverstone Park on this slide, and more to be announced by the end of the year, beginning of next year, I think is a real opportunity for Silverstone Park, for the businesses that obviously are running those facilities, and for the cluster. So it'd be good to think about, are you accessing these facilities yet? Do you want more information about them? And we'll definitely be doing lots of work going into next year with the companies running these facilities to bring them to life and make sure everybody manufacturing in the UK and elsewhere knows about these specialist facilities that are available now. So with that in mind, and obviously with 2 million square feet of planning consent and only 200,000 built and let, we have phase 3 that we got planning consent for this year, and we're looking at whether we speculatively build these in 2021, make that decision probably before the end of the year. That's 200,000 square foot units, one that is 40 and one that is 30,000. And again, same quality, specification, arrival experience, hopefully, gravitas, but also practical, useful, good space, good honest space for the advanced engineering companies that are growing in our area and attracted by all the specialist facilities. There's another image of them there. We'll have more information. There is information about this on our website, and more information to come. And then just a reminder that we continue to provide a whole range of accommodation at Silverstone Park, with the Innovation Centre there, with serviced office space, flexible leases on little offices, and that's where Hexagon has its metrology facility with a contract inspection facility there. And inside there, we converted some of the space into more of a lounge type space. We can come and sit down for a few hours and do your emails or have a meeting. There's a PlayStation that doubles as a presentation facility, and a booth for making private calls, and tea and coffee making facilities and the like there. And obviously it's not been open for a few months because of COVID-19, but that will come back into its own next year. And the other obviously sort of unit that we offer and have been continued to be really popular even during the pandemic are the small workshop spaces, small units, and we have these 4 available at the moment. Some mainly come back where companies have grown into some of the new units, and so that's the availability there. I'm happy to talk to anybody that would like to know more about those, and the information is on our website too, which is silverstone-park.com. And finally, just wanted to say I'm just really proud to be part of Silverstone Technology Cluster and to have been there from the start. I think it has been a tough year for everyone. Perhaps hear more about that and reflect on that during the day today. But we continue to deliver support and promotion of the cluster. And I guess the announcement that we've just heard about Be the Business wanting Silverstone Technology Cluster to be a trailblazer for the UK is a real testament to that, to the fact that we've managed to put this area on the map for all the right reasons. There's great opportunity. There's great opportunity for us to promote all of the expertise to all of UK manufacturing and beyond. And over the next 12 months with Be the Business. And today really perhaps we should think about what else you want us to do to help you with that. And so I'm, without any further ado, I'll hand back over for the rest of the session, and I hope you all have a fantastic few hours, hopefully being informed about things that have happened, getting some inspiring presentations from some of the great speakers that we've got on our agenda this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ros. And I always feel that when I'm dealing with Silverstone, that I'm dealing with the heart of innovation for the UK. Lots of fresh thinking, great collaboration, vision for the future, and some really, really great opportunities in terms of cluster, business, park, and being at the heart of the arc in terms of creating some form of Silicon Valley in the UK, which is the big plan for the area. And I think that Silverstone will be leading that with all the great work which is going on here in terms of development, opportunity, vision and thinking. It's incredibly inspiring listening to the lists of businesses on the site, the work that you do. I follow a lot of you in the media, and it looks absolutely amazing in terms of the work you're doing. So in these very dark times, take a moment to consider just how much you're all achieving in helping us rebuild the economy and take business forward for the betterment of mankind generally. So thanks very much for that, Ros. I think that was a great induction. John, on your comments, I'd just like to say I aspire to be your test daily to your Sir Bruce Forsyth, and we can talk about that offline. That would be a wonderful outcome as far as I'm concerned, but probably a bit beyond my capability. So now let's move on to the first session of the day, which is all about one of my key subjects, which is future mobility. And we're very lucky here because we've got 2 of the main speakers in this particular realm available to take us through this part. This covers all sorts of things which I think are probably key to unlocking economic growth and also saving the environment in the future, ranging for the whole issue around autonomy, connectivity, electrification, and how we make this all work together. So 2 speakers. The first is Philip Guest from Oxford Strategy, who I'm very familiar with, has done some incredible work in terms of this whole area, has a first-class degree in economics from Cambridge, and has also a master's in strategy innovation from Oxford University as well. So both sides of the arc in terms of capability. He founded Oxford Strategy in 2017 and has been doing all sorts of amazing things in this space. And he'll be followed by Simon Reeder from Mahle, talking about Powertrain work, which is something I think we should all take more interest in because it's the way to unlock many of these conversations around the future of mobility. So without any more ado, I'm going to pass over to Philip Guest from Oxford Strategy to take us through the future of mobility. Thank you.
Hello, this is Philip Guest speaking from the Silverstone Technology Cluster's special interest group focused on future mobility. Welcome to the annual conference. So our special interest group used to be known as the ACES special interest group, but I'll return to that later. We're now Future Mobility, which is hopefully rather self-explanatory. Here is your committee. There I am, number 3 in order. We are comprised of Roger from EV Outlook, Sunny from Gateway, myself from Oxford Strategy, and Simon Holloway from RML. We're here to help and listen. And if you've got any feedback on the Future Mobility SIG, please don't hesitate to give it to us. Best route is through Pim, so he knows what's going on. So we began over 2 years ago as the ACES SIG. So what are the ACES? It's not that self-explanatory, although I think most of you are probably very familiar with the term. So the ACES are the 4 mega trends that were identified in a post-Dieselgate environment as being the major drivers of change in the automotive industry. And they are, as described, autonomy, connectivity, electrification, and sharing. Cars will learn to drive themselves. They will be more connected and hopefully electrified at an accelerating pace. And last of all, although perhaps slowest of all these changes to happen, is that they may become shared. We may cease to own our own car and instead rent one simply for the time that we need it. So that was the ACES SIG. What did we do? Well, we had some really amazing global companies who came and spoke to us. They shared their insights at speaker events held at Silverstone Park. Topics covered included infrastructure, ecosystems challenges, and of course, each of the ACES individually. But it wasn't just the amazing global companies that we were interested in listening to. We also had some amazing local companies as well, which is, after all, precisely what we're about. Networking is a very important part of what we do, and we network not just with the people who come to speak to us, but with each other. This allows for ideas and opportunity generation, which so far I think has been moderately successful. Future amazing possibilities. Well, listen, you know, Silverstone Technology hosts the special interest groups and does a great job of doing it. I think one of the most important things is, apart from the network that it generates, is the fact that it's great value for money. If you look at other speaker events that happen in the local area and member organisations in the local area, you certainly don't get as much per pound as you do from Silverstone Technology Cluster. So you're here because you're joining the annual conference, but you know, stay involved and get involved, because we're the sum of everything that we do. So what next? Well, as I said, the ACES as individual topics are merging. It's becoming more and more apparent that you can't solve the challenge of one without addressing the challenges of the others. And as the worldview changes, and as the behaviour of OEMs changes, and as the behaviour of our individual organisations change, we're moving towards a world where the ACES overlap. And what we're more concerned about is the interaction effects between them. And to that extent, we're talking more about future mobility. And that's why we decided to rename the Special Interest Group. I hope that makes sense, and I hope it's a bit more self-explanatory. Still, we're going to continue doing the same things that we always have done, and the cornerstone of that is, of course, the great speaker events that we have. And I'm delighted today to introduce our Special Interest Group, Future Mobility Keynote speaker, Simon Reeder, who's Director of Engineering Services at Mahle. Now, we've had the pleasure of Simon's company before, where he's talked about innovation, Mahle's innovation in powertrain technology at our ecosystem event. And I'm very pleased to welcome him today, where he's going to talk about the future of the automotive powertrain. Simon, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Right, thank you very much, Philip. And I'd just like to say thank you as well for the invite from Pim and Roz. And hopefully you'll enjoy what I've got to show you today. It's something that I presented last year, as Philip already said. And I've freshened it up a little bit, and hopefully it'll be of interest. And this is a little bit about how do we perhaps fill the gaps as well as we head towards a much more electrified future. So my biggest worry today was whether the tech works. Being a tech company, always worried about, is it going to be Zoom? Is it going to be Teams? Is it all going to work? You know, that's always fun. That always seems more difficult than designing new technology for some reason. But anyway, I just thought I've got 2 slides very briefly just to give you an idea of who we are. So we're Mahle Powertrain. We are part of a global company that's called Mahle. They make components, but we do something very different. We sit in the engineering services arena. And our focus in the past has been on engines, and we came out of Cosworth as the road engine division. But of course, now it's a much wider story, and we have to consider full powertrains. What does that mean for us in the future? So engine design and development still is a core skill that we have. However, we have to look at the whole picture of electrification, controls and software, transmission, and how they all work together. And I think what Philip says about how the whole of ACES works is actually how you have to think about a powertrain now in a much broader view. So you can't just think about one element of it. And just to give you some scope, these are the sort of companies that we work for. As you can see, some of them are very local to Silverstone. Some of those are very far away. So we're a global company, and we're involved in a lot of projects with global OEMs on the transition from a pure diesel or gasoline to electrified future. So today, what I wanted to do, and I've taken a few of my animations out actually, because I've learned that from the tech. But I think we would all like to see a bit of clear sky, and we have to concern ourselves with emissions, and that is on a broad subject. You know, there's been lots of concern about CO2, but we equally have to worry about particulates and anything else that the automotive industry drives. And so we have to consider we need to meet our local air quality targets, but we also need to be careful not just to displace the emissions somewhere else. So this is a graph which perhaps a lot of you won't be familiar with. I don't know, there's automotive people in the room, but this is our cascade of CO2 limits. And you can see over the last 20 years, it's actually dramatically reduced already. But clearly we need a flight path that gets us to a much lower level of CO2. And you can see that legislation is driving us that way. All the boxes are showing the new legislation down the middle, lower amounts of CO2 in grams per kilometre, and this will continue. And of course, alongside that, we have local legislation. So what happens in the UK when we have a gasoline and diesel ban? How are we going to meet those requirements? And what do we do in the meantime? There's still 10 years, and the historic fleet of cars makes up a massive proportion of our emissions. So we have to consider all of these things. And so we also need to think about, what do we mean by zero? Is zero really zero? Is zero just tailpipe zero? So this is one that sort of illustrates that really. What we've always looked at is this tank to wheel side. We look at the in-use of the vehicle, we concern ourselves with its CO2, we concern ourselves with its miles per gallon. But actually, like many companies now, they're looking to consider, what do we do for our full CO2 or carbon neutral future? And so as part of that, we need to look at the whole vehicle life cycle. So that includes producing the vehicle, then how we use the vehicle, how we get the energy for using the vehicle. And then when we finish with the vehicle, what do we dispose of? How do we dispose of it? So a life cycle analysis is where we're really starting to head towards in automotive industry. And that's a much better reflection of our actual CO2 emissions. So how do we do that? That's always difficult. And I can put the graphs up here, but there'll always be somebody that says, oh, well, you haven't taken into account this and that. So you have to do the best you can. And what we try to do is we try to make sure that we've taken into account most of what we do. So if we look at it purely on tank to wheel, so this is just like your use of your vehicle, the electric and the fuel cell car, which are to the right-hand side, just show us zero because they look great. In use, there is no emissions, there is no CO2. And the left-hand side, the blue bar, is the internal combustion engine, and we're looking at plug-in hybrid is the light green bar. And they, of course, look really bad. So, but what happens if we consider a life cycle? Actually, it changes quite significantly. There's a lot of energy required to generate batteries and motors and the things that make up a battery electric vehicle. And it's clearly the direction of travel that we're going in, and clearly we need to find better ways of producing those main components so we can reduce the CO2. But as it is at the moment, this is a picture of how it would look in a mid-sized car. So actually the balance isn't as far away as we might think between pure electric and a pure ICE. And if we potentially add in a green energy mix, then it looks better. And actually the big thing for us is that a plug-in hybrid can look like it's actually a very good and attractive solution. Now, that's obviously a current picture. That's how it looks at the moment, and these things will change with time. But the problem we find with a PHEV is generally a lot of people have just grabbed an engine and they've grabbed a battery and they've put them together, and I'm not sure that they've really thought about the best way to deliver that as a real package together. So we've had a look, and we've decided, we did an analysis and we looked at various different factors, and I won't go into the detail of what's on this graph. If anybody wants to know, they can come and talk to me later. But effectively, we've looked at the driving range and we've looked at the CO2 of life cycle, and we believe that a good PHEV compromise should be a battery specified around about 100 to 150 kilometers range. And generally what you find with a lot of the PHEVs currently is they're actually much lower than that. And that information is actually backed up by a study that was done in Europe. And interestingly, the graph in the top left-hand side, the dotted lines are the fuel economy you should get if you believe the NEDC drive cycle. What you're really getting is the blue distribution. So you can see that you're actually only getting a quarter of the fuel economy that you expected. You're using 4 times the amount of fuel. And the red part of the graph on the right-hand side, so Germany we take, and that's approximately how it will look across Europe. But in Germany, you can see they do much better. But actually the red bars is a company car, and that means that the company car drivers are not doing so well. And of course this is about motivation, and this is about control of the PHEV. So if you get paid for your fuel, for instance, as a company car driver, maybe you'll be less likely to plug it in. And the people that are plugging in are the bubbles at the top, so they're getting close to the range that's expected. The people that are not plugging in are right at the bottom with the red bubbles, and that's why you can have such a big differentiation between one PHEV user and another. And so there is a control system, and this is where Philip mentioned connectivity. If things are connected, we can create geofencing around certain towns so that actually have to have a state of charge. You won't be able to run the ICE. Those sorts of technologies are available now. So it potentially allows us a way to use a PHEV. But there is a challenge. Hybrid powertrains, very challenging. We have effectively 2 powertrains in one. And we think the sweet spot, actually, if you looked at it, is about 90% propulsion systems, but that produces a lot of challenges. So electrified isn't really mainstream yet. It's growing, and it's coming, but it isn't there, so the costs are high. And the combustion engines become very complicated to meet emissions over its full operating range. So this gives us a big issue, but perhaps we could use a simplified powertrain. So if we look at driveline architecture, the two key architectures you have in a hybrid is a parallel or a series hybrid. One of these is directly connected to the wheels and the other isn't, effectively. One will charge your battery and the other one can drive your car along and charge the battery. So what we'd like to see is the best of both of those, so what we call a dual mode. And this also allows us to drive electric only on that, as well as it does to charge the battery, or actually use the two in combination. So if we look at that drive line, if we use the battery, then effectively it's a battery electric car. It drives the wheels directly from the battery. Nothing new there, just like a BEV. We can use a series hybrid mode. So effectively we use the engine, the dedicated hybrid engine, which is specific to the application, is working like a generator and charges the battery. Or we can go in parallel mode where actually we use both. So then we can use a balance between the two and get the most efficient driving. What this allows us to do is allows us to modify the way the vehicle works depending on where it is and what we're trying to achieve, but still keeping the vehicle dynamics as you or I would expect as an end user. And we've had a look, and this is really a study for us. I mean, we don't make products. This is to demonstrate capability, but to look at what would future mobility look like. We feel there's a place for a dedicated hybrid engine. We reduce the complexity. It's optimized for a hybrid use case. We have what we call something called a passive MJI. This is Mahle jet ignition. It's a different way of igniting the fuel and air mixture in the combustion chamber, much more efficient, and gives us a very high efficiency engine at a very low cost. And then what we do is we couple that with a dedicated hybrid gearbox. So this is like high level of integration and adaptability and flexibility. So it allows us to do multiple speed gearboxes. It's lower cost again, and it allows us to keep a compact drivetrain. And we can modify it. So it's flexible, as I've mentioned already, and adaptable. And we can use a 2-cylinder engine with 60 kilowatts maybe, and a 1-speed transmission for a compact car, all the way up to a much more complicated but 90 kilowatt DHE, but with a 3-cylinder engine and with more transmission ratios. And this can use anything in between. So as a modular concept, it allows us to flex around that to deliver what's best for each of those vehicles. And in amongst our much more complicated landscape of powertrains now, we have, from micro, and we have, a pure BEV down the bottom left, and then we may have PHEVs fitting in the middle, and then fuel cells and ICE in the right. Then we're able to fit in the PHEV in the middle and widen its use. And then we think the modular powertrain would fit in amongst this. So this is a suitable powertrain for many different uses. So really, and that's a really brief run through, and I'm sorry it has to be quick, but it's tight for timing today. So what we see is that depending on the application, we have to consider the powertrain technologies. We have to remember customer demands, and cost effectiveness needs to be considered, and that's the balance. And that, I think, is the tricky balance today that we're seeing between pure electric drive cars and still internal combustion ones. We need to focus on environmentally sound mobility, but we need to look at the whole life cycle and not just its in-use emissions. And for us, it's quite clear legislation is driving us towards EVs, but actually we need to look at future mobility as technology neutral and allow the engineers to do the engineering and just set us very difficult targets. We love that. as Philip mentioned about Rob Lewis, you know, we love to solve problems. That's what we're here for. And as Mahle Powertrain, effectively, that's what we do. You know, and this is our integrated approach to powertrain design at a vehicle level. So that's what I wanted to say today, and thank you for listening. And any questions?
Thank you very much. That was really, really interesting, Simon. And we have got a number of questions. So if I fill these in to you now from the chat line, and if you would respond, that would be great. So the first one is for both Simon and for Philip, stating that all their cars across the group will be electric. But Simon has shown here that there is life in ICE technologies yet. Have VW jumped the gun perhaps, or will this stance from them make EVs even more mainstream? What's your view?
Go on, I'll jump in. First, I know Volkswagen very well. So look, you know, Volkswagen are coming from a very particular place as a result of Dieselgate. So was that 2015? That was now just over 5 years ago. So Volkswagen had to make the leap because they needed to distance themselves from the old technology. This is very much a branding thing. So we shouldn't be surprised by what they've done. I think that we're used to 100 years of pretty much every car being almost identical. And with the exception of some very small two-seater sports cars, you know, MX-5s and stuff like that, pretty much any car that you buy today can do almost any job that you want it to do. Whether it's taking the rubbish to the tip in the back of your Mercedes S-Class, which you can if you want to, or going on a family holiday in Volkswagen Polo, which was the sort of car that we used to go on holiday with when I was a kid. So, you know, we're used to this, and they've all had four-cylinder petrol engines, and then more recently four-cylinder diesel engines, all combustion engine. So there's been this sort of, you know, complete homogeneity about what we do. And I think the future is going to be very, very different. I think possibly 4 seats and a space in the back to transport stuff will remain the format of the car. But I think in terms of powertrain, there's going to be lots and lots and lots of different use cases. And I think perhaps if you live in an urban area with a driveway and you have your own charging point, then yes, the Volkswagen solution, the ID3, would be absolutely brilliant for you. But if you live in a very high density urban environment where you have to park on street and you buy a car perhaps that's 10 years old and you live in a flat or a tower block, then there may be a different solution. Or if you live in the middle of the countryside, there may be a different solution. Or if you drive long distances, there may be a different solution. Or if you only do the school run, there may be a different solution. So I think a multi-powertrain future is the way forward. The one thing I would say is I wholeheartedly agree with Simon, which is what government should do is set aggressive targets which are good for the environment and let the engineers get on with finding what the right solution is rather than just mandating it.
Simon, do you want to add anything at all to that?
Yeah, I totally agree with Philip. I think, again, I've worked with Volkswagen and Audi Group for a long time now, almost 20 years, and they are coming at it from a different place. They have to. They've got to do a big chunk of seem to be green for a start. You know, being honest, but that is the transition route. We will be heading towards an electrification future, and certainly a pure EV will have its place. But equally, as Philip says, there'll be multiple powertrains for others to use as well. And a little thing that I found interesting this week, and one of my favourite places to surf is Auto Trader, and you can actually find 200 or more ID3s for sale on there, which actually was really quite shocking for me because I thought this car would be sold out straight away and actually would be the game changer in mainstream EV. That doesn't seem to be the case, which in some ways is slightly concerning, but in others says that we're not perhaps quite ready yet, and maybe the PHEV direction is a gap fill. You know, I don't think this is necessarily the answer or the only answer, but perhaps it's more aligned with what people have seen in their life over their years. And as Philip says, you know, have seen that your car comes with an engine in the front and the people get in the middle. That maybe will change.
Excellent. So I've got another question come through from Roger. Given the 2035 deadline for any ICE component, aren't all R&D programs running out of usable time?
So I can pick that up. I mean, you are right. Yeah, you are absolutely right. You know, our R&D engine programs take at least 4 years to get to fruition from an idea. But it's not to say that people aren't already working on these. You know, it is very difficult for OEMs because they have to balance generating whole new platforms for pure electric drive, whilst also keeping going in the meantime with legislation and making sure that their current vehicle mix meets legislation so they can sell it. EU7 is coming, and more electrification will be required to meet that legislation. And so they are actually having to work on these sorts of concepts already. It's just, how do you take that concept into real life? Is it using an existing powertrain, or is it something that you design a specific engine for? And we're talking about a much more simple engine now. We're not talking about the complex engines that needed to do everything. These are more specific, would be more dedicated to that particular use case, so in somewhat simpler and technology that's pretty much already available.
I'd also say, I'd also allude to something that Simon said earlier on in his presentation, which is that actually the biggest problem is not the mix of powertrains in the cars that are sold this year and next year. The biggest problem is that there are a lot of really, really, really filthy, dirty vehicles out there which never met the standards under which they were built, let alone modern standards. And if we can get those old petrol and diesel cars and vans and buses and trucks off the road, then we'll be doing at least as much, if not more, to improve the environment than we will do by worrying what sort of new car people buy today.
I think that is a really good point. And in the industry I'm now in as well, you'd be glad to hear, Philip, that's exactly how we feel about it as well in terms of our trains. So we get that. Another question here for Simon then. What is the main driver behind the green energy mix, reducing the lifetime CO2 emissions of an ICE vehicle more than for a BEV?
So effectively, it just changes the energy mix of an EV is very heavily dedicated to the production of its batteries and delivery of all of those materials. So as I've said, it's very difficult. The graphs will always show a different mix depending on what you use, but the big driver there is that you can use green electricity in a factory. The cars or the ICE is very easy to manufacture, whereas whatever you do with an EV at the moment, it's hard to take the energy out of the manufacturing. And so although you can use green electricity, you've still got the energy intensity of making batteries and of the motors. They are the big issue that we have to address. If we're really going to push forward on EVs, we have to sort that out. One of the big areas that we're actually looking at in Mahle, the big Mahle product group, and in Mahle Powertrain, is how can we develop low-cost, either less intense batteries or in motors, to try and use maybe older technology, but to bring the cost and energy intensity back down. Because what everybody's hunting for at the moment is very high performance. And actually, I think we've got to find the balance there as well. So really what drives that is it's very difficult to bring the EV energy requirements down to build them, whereas it's much easier to bring it down in ICE. And you just ask yourself, why didn't we do it before? You know, we just haven't got the energy mix around, I think, is the point. You know, and nobody's been really focused on how their energy gets to their factory. And it's this case of we're in a bubble, we're in a factory, we use what we use. I think, as I said earlier, everybody's looking at life cycle much more now, and their ability to go carbon neutral as a whole company.
I think that's a very good answer there. So we've got time for one more question, which comes from Robert Palmer. And I'd like to remind everybody, we've got the Right Honourable Andrea Ledson joining us later on this afternoon. So you might want to save this question and ask it again Robert, as well, but I'm just out of interest for Simon and Philip, let's get their views. Why have UK politicians, unlike the EU policymakers, failed to understand that they should set tough environmental targets but let the engineers tackle the problem? Feel free to answer in any form you feel like, Philip and Simon, in terms of that question, and we will try and bring that back this afternoon as well for Andrea as well.
I'll be generous. I'll be generous to the UK political establishment, and I'll just say this. I'll say I think they've been very busy recently, and with other things happening, and elections, and other things happening, and more other things happening, that the potential for thoughtful policy is somewhat restricted. And like I said, I'm being generous. I think there is not enough bandwidth in government to deal with all the things that are going on at the moment, and therefore they are reduced to slightly on the hoof policy making. And I understand why that is, but it doesn't help. And I think the point of your question, Rob, is supporting what Simon said, which is let's understand what we're really trying to achieve and mandate for what we're trying to achieve, and then let the smart people like Simon and his mates at Mahle and lots of other you guys out there who are doing all that sort of stuff. And I see a few faces on the screen that I recognise, people who are working in this arena, people working to make motorsport more efficient and how that translates into road cars. Let you get on with it. So yeah, Rob, I agree with the thrust of your question, and I'll let you ask it again to Andrea Ledson this afternoon.
Lovely.
That's probably best. I think I would just summarise that as headline grabbing. That would be my summary of the facts.
Excellent. Well, that was a really enjoyable section. Thank you both, Philip and Simon. That was absolutely smashing in terms of an update on future mobility. I've learnt lots from that. I'm sure everybody else has. There's some quite interesting comments on the chat. I picked out some of the questions, but those are up all day, so do have a look at them. So thank you very much. Now, we move on to section 2 in terms of our special interest groups, which is focusing on digital and advanced manufacturing. Another big area in terms of how we get the future of Great Britain in our economic recovery resolved. In this particular section, we have Kieron Salter, who is the champion for this, and Charlotte Horobin, who will also be speaking on this. So, Kieron, can I hand over to you, please, to kick off this second section on digital and advanced manufacturing? Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Hopefully you can hear me, and I've done all the unmuting and everything correctly. And good morning, everybody. Let me just quickly share my screen. A couple of slides just to support this little introduction. So yeah, so Kieron Salter and I lead the Digital and Advanced Manufacturing SIG, the DAM SIG as it's affectionately known. I thought I'd just give you a bit of an introduction to what we do, who we are, and then hand over for the main discussion from Charlotte. But firstly, I should introduce to you the other members of the committee that I work alongside with, and that's James Rees from Enable, Voxeljet, and Bradley McEwen from Beckhoff, and also our recently joined longtime friend Neil Johansson from Charpak. And with us and Pim's guidance, we put together the events and the strategy for the Digital and Advanced Manufacturing Special Interest Group. I mean, we are here to represent anything that's digital, smart, automated, and advanced in the manufacturing sector. A good example of this would clearly be things like additive manufacturing, which we're probably all familiar with, and 3D printing, but it's also much more broad than that. It's efficiency, it's software-driven manufacturing, it's smart technology, it's monitoring, tracking, and connectivity. And in particular, of course, things like the emergence of 5G and how that can be used to improve manufacturing efficiency and productivity. So I thought I'd just give you a bit of a flavour of the sort of things we've been up to actually over the last year, and give a bit of a recap of the last 3 events. And like all good things, I'll do those in reverse order in terms of chronology. And our most recent event, held in October, was of course an online event and focused on funding and technology support. R&D technology support, R&D funding, and we had some great speakers from HSSMI and Made Smarter, which is a national campaign that's currently being focused in the north, but is going to probably be much more broader than that, around how we make all of manufacturing smarter using technology. And the AMRC, one of the catapults, also discussing those sort of funding opportunities. And I think this brought a lot of interest to various parties in the room at the time because of how we've all had to diversify and change our businesses in the last 6 months. And then if we roll back a bit to July, we actually had our first virtual and online event post-COVID lockdown. And we actually, as a group, thought this would be a great opportunity to bring the digital platform that we were now utilising to better effect. And, you know, normally we have an actual gathering of people, and we're restricted by geography with a lot of that in terms of how far people might travel. So using that digital platform, we thought, well, we'll broaden it as much as we can. And we actually invited into our special interest group for that event other clusters and other organisations. So we had representation from Medilink and also from MAA and the Midlands Aerospace Alliance. And we literally covered a lot of geography using the seamless digital platform of a Zoom conference. And we had some great conversation and discussion around how people had diversified their businesses, how they had adapted to maybe making PPE, how they'd adapted to working from home, and you know, frankly, how we adapted to holding meetings and conferences like this online. So that was a great event, and I think that's sort of set the scene of how we're going to really do a lot of things in the future, because it's even when we're out of lockdown and out of restrictions, I think we've all realised that there are some efficiencies that can be gained by using these digital platforms where appropriate. Not always appropriate, and it is great to meet face to face with people, and that sort of rolls back to our last event we had before lockdown back in March, which we had a showcase event. We had actual real people in a real room, and they were getting close to each other and drinking cups of tea and eating biscuits. And it seems like a very long time ago now, but one of the great things that we found out of that event was it was not only the last actual event with real people together, but we actually made it into a showcase, and we used the opportunity for everybody to, rather than assume that everybody else in the room knows what they're doing, we started to talk about our companies and introducing our companies to each other. And guess what? We found out that a lot of people didn't know everything that everybody else did, and there were lots of collaboration opportunities that came out of that. And the big request we had at the end of that event was, can we do more like this, please? And can we actually cross over with some of the other SIGs and the other organisations in the membership, so that we can learn what everybody does. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do it in the physical way, but I think we are managing to bring some of that collaboration together. One of our speakers at that event back in March was Charlotte Horobin. So talking about state of the nation of UK manufacturing, I'm delighted that she's going to be speaking next, and I'd like to introduce you as our next speaker. But before I do, rather selfishly, I'd just like to take the opportunity to tell you about one of the organisations that's doing something about digital manufacturing in our area, and that's of course KWSP. And I'll just very quickly take this opportunity to update you where we're at with Silverstone. So this is our new facility, which probably a lot of you have seen coming together over in the new park that was introduced earlier. It's going to be specifically a digital manufacturing centre focused on additive manufacturing. Pleased to say that we're expecting to be fully open and operational in Q1 of next year. We start the final fit-out works before Christmas, and I should introduce you also to Nigel Robinson, who's going to be the COO of that facility, and we've got several other new members of staff joining to run that. So that's very exciting, and it's going to be the new home really of the digital manufacturing and advanced manufacturing SIG, I suspect. So look forward to welcoming you all to that next year. So on that note, I'd like to hand over to Charlotte, who's going to talk to you about manufacturing in a post-pandemic and post-Brexit UK. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kieron. And let me just pop up my slides. And it's funny that you referenced the session that we did earlier on in the year, because I actually flicked back over those slides as I prepared the deck for this morning. So just whilst that hopefully loads up onto everybody's screen, I thought I'd just set the scene. So Make UK, we are the national body that represents UK manufacturing. We've got members of all shapes and sizes, but we also work with a number of excellent partners, and I'm really pleased that Silverstone Technology Cluster is absolutely at the heart of that partnership. So what we do is we make sure that we can collaborate and that we can make sure that the challenges, the issues that you face really are put forward to government, and hopefully with that we can make some real change. Now, Pim sent me some difficult homework. What does a post-pandemic, post-Brexit world look like? So I've charged up the crystal ball, and it really does depend on what kaleidoscope you look through. Obviously, Mr. Johnson's got many things to consider. He's thinking about the health of the nation and a possible vaccine. He's thinking about levelling up the economy. What does a post-EU trading relationship look like? And also, will we have some challenges around the UK constitution with things like tensions with trade and issues with Northern Ireland? And will Scottish independence rear its head? But what I wanted to do today was focus pragmatically on what have we seen in manufacturing across this year? And actually, what are the truths? What are the pillars that we can probably hang some of our colours to for 2021? So what I thought I'd do is just share with you this chart that will be familiar to those who attended the presentation back at the start of the year, sort of February, March time. And this is a quarterly survey that we've run since 1998, and it really does take a temperature as to how the manufacturing sector is feeling. So you can see here the balance of output and orders. And this is not magnitude, this is more direction of travel. So when we were presenting at the start of the year, those order books, we were presenting the Q4 data, and sort of, it was weak growth, and I was probably a bit doom and gloom about what Brexit might bring. But what we did not forecast was the Q1 impact of COVID-19. And you can see there, Q2 2020, we actually saw the biggest hit ever. We had the worst set of results. And in Q3, you can see there a slight recovery. So certainly not this kind of V shape, but more a slow and steady recovery. And you can see there also, we've put the global financial crisis ghost bars. And the big difference, of course, was you could argue the financial crisis, there was writing on the wall, whereas COVID-19, I think, was pretty much a huge shock to many of us. And also the time to prepare was nil. If we were talking about Q4, we'd have been forecasting 6 weeks ago that output would be probably at -7, orders at -4. We're about to publish those at the start of December, but the sentiment I've really got from our membership has been that this autumn hasn't been what the later summer months promised to be. A second lockdown and just really dwindling confidence really has been hurting a number of sectors. But on the whole, we are seeing most businesses operating at that kind of 75 up to 100% level now, which is positive to see. If I were going to talk about this year, where we think we'll end up actually for manufacturing output, we do think that will have been hit at sort of 10%, 11% down, but we do forecast some GDP growth of around 5 to 6% for next year. So hopefully that's the highbrow economic piece. And we can now get into some of the more real issues that we've seen. So I think the big challenge that the manufacturing sector faced in the first lockdown was we were almost the victim of poor and inconsistent messaging. I thought it was quite clear when the Prime Minister explained that you were permitted to travel and go to work if you could not work from home. That seemed really clear to me, but very soon I was bombarded with calls from chief executives, MDs, HR directors to say that their workforce had digested that news and decided that they were told to stay at home. We had tensions building between staff that had been furloughed, staff that hadn't been furloughed. We saw tensions where non-production staff that could work at home were doing so, and you had production staff going in, perhaps concerned about their own health, but actually receiving a little bit of abuse, if I'm honest, from neighbours in their local area, which was quite surprising. Now, as we enter, or as we're, I suppose, coming out of the second lockdown, manufacturers do have a big concern about further lockdowns. And one of the big issues that we do hear very much is the concern for lots of different tiers. Many of you work and operate with supply chains all across the country. So it's not really fair to say that you just operate in Northampton. You've probably got supply chains all across the country, and you're I'm sure, concerned about how that might impact your business, but we've made some very clear recommendations to government. We of course had the spending review yesterday, which, I mean, we welcome some of the measures to support particularly the lowest paid in our economy, to support young people, apprentices, to boost R&D, and obviously a big spend in infrastructure, which does typically tend to play into a benefit for UK manufacturing. But our big concern is, and we're due to meet the Chancellor on Monday, what about those sectors that are not going to bounce back really, really quickly? Really strategic sectors like automotive and aerospace that are highly paid, highly productive, export intensive. And just because we roll out a vaccine, that does not mean that we'll get back to the car sales or the flights that are going around the world that drive some of these really strategic supply chains that many of you play into. So that really is where we're focusing next. Actually, where is the specific support to help the manufacturing supply chain that is so valuable, that isn't easy just to build it back? So 2021, I won't mince my words. We do think it's going to be a challenging year, but with challenge, I think if you prepare, you can obviously, where possible, turn that into an opportunity. We, of course, I think the biggest issue right now facing us is the uncertainty around our trading arrangements with the EU and what that relationship will look like. We're talking about building back greener. We're also talking about digital, much, much more. But generally, we do think that there is a big need to build on the positive perceptions that UK manufacturing has had in 2020. You were a beacon of hope for the country when you needed to diversify very quickly to supply parts for the ventilator challenge, to make sure PPE could be made in the UK, to make sure that food and drink were supplied to people's tables and that people had the medicines that they need. So we want to make sure that that really positive rhetoric isn't forgotten. So I'm going to boil it down into 4 key areas. We're going to talk about global, we'll talk about green, we'll talk about making things smarter, and also that perception piece. So we are very buoyant, or I guess we talk very forcefully about how UK manufacturing really is the powerhouse for exports. We get frustrated that the sector is cited as being 10% of the UK economy, but you're 2/3 of R&D, you're over half of the UK exports, and you can see here some of the places that we really are trading with. So I think obviously our largest trading nation or trading partner, the USA, we have a new relationship to navigate with Mr. Biden. I think it will particularly be on the radar for those in the defence world, those in the aerospace world. I guess our other great big trading partner, and actually the largest when we combine all of the states, is the EU. And obviously the end of the transition period, we must absolutely stress, deal or no deal, this is going to impact your business. So please don't stick your head in the sand. We're doing a lot to support manufacturing and make sure that you've got the advice to hand, but please don't think that this will not impact you somewhere along your supply chain. It absolutely will. We probably forecast that if you've got an integrated just-in-time supply chain, such as an automotive business, that is where you are going to see the most pain and the most stress within manufacturing. We are seeing growing exports to places like Japan, Poland and Turkey. So there certainly are new horizons there. And we're also seeing that many manufacturers are reviewing their supply chain and are restructuring it. Many have been burnt with perhaps single supply, or a supply that's perhaps in Asia and it's been disrupted during COVID-19. 34% are citing that they will increase their UK content. But personally, I do not buy into the fact that a post or after the end of the transition period that, you know, we really will boost back our UK manufacturing because there'll be lots more opportunity. I really don't think that that is totally true. I think there's many, many moving parts, but certainly we've got to make sure that we get our trade around the world and that we bring that wealth back into the UK economy. We've seen that digital connectivity has really boosted exports, with people using LinkedIn, using things like AR and VR to be able to sell particularly complex bits of kit. So that's really interesting to see some of particularly the larger capital equipment suppliers are now looking at this kit, so I can see that that will feed into the supply chain. And of course, the Department for International Trade have bolstered the support that is available. So again, be in it to win it, make sure that you do reach out. There is support there, but you do need to seek advice. If we're thinking about making it green, there's a really high awareness of net zero. So 90% of manufacturers are aware of net zero. However, many are struggling to take action. So, or should I say, smaller businesses, I think, are struggling to take the action. So half of small businesses saying, yeah, I'm aware, but actually I don't really know what to do. Whereas only 1 in 10 large businesses are struggling with what to do. So there is a pragmatic campaign and a pragmatic need to be able to help smaller businesses to address net zero. I was reflecting over the last 7-8 years that I've been working with Make UK, and formerly we were known as EEF. We've gone from talking about the cost of energy and very much focused on kilowatt hour prices through to sustainability. I think the thought process really has evolved. 25% of our members have received a request to green their products from the supply chain. There is a drive from the consumer, but will the consumer pay for it? Not always. I don't think we're quite there. But we are seeing that businesses that are addressing their own sustainability and particularly environmental impacts, 40% have seen that it's boosted their profits. 30% have said that they've become more competitive. And it's really interesting to see that many think that this is also a way to attract new employees, and many that are taking interviews are interested to see what companies are doing around this agenda. On the political landscape, we've got the net zero strategy due to be announced before COP26, which is the UN Climate Change Conference. And for me, for 2021, I think there'll be 3 key things happening within UK manufacturing. Yes, you'll be thinking about reducing cost and the very obvious thing of making sure that you are using less energy and you are sourcing that energy in a smarter way. But I do think you'll be moving into more green products. There'll be more green solutions. The Prime Minister's 10-point plan, I think, has offered confidence that there definitely is a direction of travel. So I think people will be investing in this area. But ultimately, I also think the third strand is a change to business models. So I know Sharpak are attending the conference today as a proud STC member, and actually talking about your whole business model. How do you operate in a circular economy? What is your true green impact? I really do think that we'll see some change there. And then our third out of the 4 strands that I promised to talk about would be making it smart. So the left-hand side of this slide, you can just see how many manufacturers are working their way through these different stages. So this is how aware they are of industrial digital technologies. So to make it very simple, pre-conception means that they are not aware at all the way then from conception that they're dabbling, evolution, they're really making a difference in their business, through to revolution, where you're perhaps embracing servitization, totally changing your business model. And one thing that's really interesting, over the last 2 years, we've gone from 3 in 10 manufacturers not aware, so in that pre-conception stage, that's now down to 1 in 10. So there really has been a big step change. And I think 2021, for those who have already invested, they've told us that they've been more resilient. They've told us that they've won more orders, that they've been able to diversify much more effectively. And I think they'll go on to evolve further. For those who haven't already been investing, if they've survived into 2021, I do really think that they've now got the the business case to invest. We're certainly seeing from our membership that they plan to invest in people and IT, and therefore we are seeing a reshaping of organisations. And we're also seeing, I think, a great thing, people embracing the next generation. We're certainly talking to more universities and colleges now, and manufacturers seem less nervous about bringing in a younger person that is more digitally native, that really can help with things like social media, managing software, and making your business more efficient and more productive. So then the final pillar that I'll talk about, that I think you'll all be really supportive of, is rebalancing the UK economy with UK manufacturing. I I've already cited that, you know, technically 10% of the UK economy is UK manufacturing, but I totally disbelieve this. If we adding the support services, really, we're talking about 25% of the UK economy, 2.7 million people employed with an average salary 13% higher than other sectors. And actually across our geography, it ranges from anywhere between 22 and 50% higher if you're perhaps in an aerospace supply chain. But what we do here is that manufacturers are not happy with the levelling up efforts from government. 42% are currently not happy. Actually, it's not all about infrastructure. Manufacturers want to see clean energy. They want to see the transformation of traditional sectors. So if you've been supplying a widget to the, I don't know, automotive sector, we think that we're going to see businesses that are much broader in terms of the sectors that they supply, the way that they supply those parts, and perhaps more talking about capability as opposed to individual components. So we do expect to see more devolution, and we'd encourage you to absolutely get involved. Get involved with your MP, your local enterprise partnership, work as part of your local economy, which by being here virtually today, I think you're absolutely embracing. And we've got to make sure that we continue to invest in apprenticeships, that we upskill our existing employees. We can't lose them from manufacturing, because when those order books build, we'll go back to the big issue of the day being skills again. So I'm going to finish here with a few images from a company called Vitsu. And actually, I think it's been really hard to craft this presentation for this audience, because the Silverstone Technology Cluster, I think, is far ahead of the game. You're a world-leading place. Silverstone, I know Ros talks very strongly and passionately that when you say Silverstone, people know where that is on the globe, and that's really powerful for you. You're diverse in what you're doing. You're agile, you're already ahead of what the green opportunities might be, and you really are working as a local network. This company here, Vitsu, that I was going to highlight, really, I want to make sure that people can go away and be proud of UK manufacturing. This is a business that built a brand new factory a couple of years ago based on the learnings from the Spanish flu in 1918. So it's got natural ventilation, natural light to make sure that the well-being of the employees is really good. And through COVID-19, they've fed them both at work, but also at home. They produce products that are there for life, so green products that they export all around the world. And I just thought that was a really great reflection that UK manufacturing is alive, it's well, it's green, and we've got a great opportunity to make sure that this is a better place to live. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was very inspirational and very useful. Just before, I'm inviting questions now, but there have been a couple of comments which I think potentially are just worth going back to. So first of all, from Sharpak, we have been successfully operating a localized circular economy for 2 years, and we'll be very happy to share this with STC members, which I think is great as well. And also from Teresa and Medilink, we will have innovation funding from medtech / health and wellbeing, and it's very broad until 2023 for small and medium companies in East Midlands. If you want more details, please contact Teresa at medilinkem.com. Okay, and I'm sure we can send that out if anyone needs it. So the floor is now open for any questions to either Kieron or Charlotte. Any questions coming through at all? No? I mean, Charlotte, of the pillars that you identified, which do you think is the most prescient and the one we should deal with first? Where would you focus our efforts?
I guess we can't avoid the elephant in the room. The end of the transition period is going to cause a headache to many businesses. That's not scaremongering. It's just the facts. We've had a long relationship, an integrated relationship with the EU, and to unpick it is just not going to be simple. But I actually think the digital piece, because I think digital unlocks so many other things. It allows us to trade around the world. It allows us to be more productive and efficient. It allows us to create better paid, higher skilled jobs. And it also makes sure that we can address the green agenda. So for me, I think digital is probably the most interesting.
Okay, I'm still waiting for some questions, but I've got one of my own while I'm waiting, so we'll do that as well. So I think you mentioned the rise of Japan, Poland and Turkey. In terms of adjusting the way that we do things and think about things, is there anything we should be considering in order to open up those opportunities for the companies at Silverstone Park? Any differences?
For me, it's really twofold. I'd take expert advice. So the Department for International Trade, as I've said, they are investing much more money to make sure that we can, boost UK exports. And I do believe that there's a movement not just to think about territories, but actually to make sure that there are sector specialists that can really help your business. But I also think peer-to-peer sharing of best practice, it's what our members tell us when we talk about levelling up. They don't want to talk about great big grand national plans. Actually, they want to share best practice with their peers who they trust in their local economy.
I think that's really, really good. I mean, Kieron, do you want to add anything to those questions? I have a couple coming through.
Well, I was just going to say around the digital piece, really, which is, I think we've all become a bit zoomed out and Teams meetings out. It was a novel thing that got us back on our feet as businesses all quite quickly, and we were able to communicate even though we're all working from home. But it's become too much, and I think we've become too dependent on those technologies. And certainly my day, probably like many's, is just filled with back-to-back Zoom meetings. And frankly, that's got to stop. Otherwise, we won't get back to doing the work that needs to happen between times. But what it has highlighted is that digital connectivity and digital technologies should be utilised to help our businesses and make us more efficient. And as we start to wind that back and get the right balance between conference calls over video, but actually the other benefits that like what I mentioned around that special interest group, where we were able to break down geographic boundaries. We could have an instantaneous conference with people 200 miles away, and no one had to travel, and everyone had gained sort of several hours in their days doing that sort of stuff. But then there's also things like we've looked at in our business, how you automate certain activities to make the business more efficient. And get people, the actual people activity focused on some of the other more important key issues within the business, not processing an invoice or processing a bit of paperwork. Those things can be automated now. And I think, we should all be looking at how we become more productive and how we then reassign our resources in a more effective way, because it might be freeing people up to look at the more sustainable side of our business, or how we, interact with our younger people better and create those educational plans and stuff. So I think we all have that responsibility, but we've never had the time before, and perhaps we can free some of that up.
I think that's a really good point, Kieron. So I've got a question from Roger here, actually, which is quite close to my heart as someone who's a managing director of a train company. Next year, we're going to be delivering people on the first 100% electric sustainable train to COP26. And we actually launched the week of COP26, so that will be the first high-speed train which does that in the UK. And Roger's question is, what advice does Charlotte have on COP26? It's a big opportunity, but what should we do? And I think that's really valid for anyone in the UK thinking, how do we participate in that? Charlotte, what's your view?
So Make UK, we're really gearing up next year to make sure that we can work with organisations like STC and our wider membership, because we really want to showcase UK manufacturing as a forward-thinking sector. We want to show particularly the small to medium-sized businesses, because it's not just about the Shells and the BPs. We've got to really address net zero. We've got to help people of all shapes and sizes take pragmatic steps. So we want to make sure that manufacturers can pledge their support to make a change, but we also want to showcase the fantastic businesses like Sharpak that are doing incredible things that are far beyond turning off the lights and making sure that you're recycling.
I think that's a great response. Kieron, have you anything to add to that at all?
No.
Okay. Well, I've got another question here, which is embracing the new digitally aware young generation could be key. What do we need to do to attract them into our businesses?
Well, we need to show them what the opportunities are first. We try to do that as much as we can, and I know lots of other people in the STC do, in terms of showing young people what the opportunities are in any career, not just the engineering side of it. And I did a presentation recently to some schools in Buckingham, where I said the first thing to do is, as a young person, you need to identify what would make you get out of bed in the morning, and what sort of jobs do you like. Now, what sort of things interest you? Is it music, or is it cars? Because any of those things you can then start to find and forge a career around. But I think we have a responsibility to show people that any career, not just engineering, is more than just the maths, or more than just operating a machine. There are lots of other things like the social media, the marketing, the creativity. And if we can demonstrate where those opportunities are, it may be that the people that are learning things in and out of school at the moment will realise that can sort of find a career or forge a career in that way.
I think that's a really great response. Charlotte, you also mentioned the importance of XR to the digital strategy. Certainly in a number of people on the park's experience over the pandemic, VR has proved a great way of connecting design teams to facilitate decision making. Have you any examples in manufacturing you could highlight, which would probably be very helpful?
I could get egg on my face. I'm suspecting that could be a typo because we were talking about AR and VR. And yeah, particularly, I think I mentioned loosely and happy to have the conversation offline as opposed to mentioning particular names and brands. But obviously the ventilator challenge was a prime example where these technologies were embraced and did make a difference and make things come to life. But particularly capital equipment, machinery manufacturers that have got complex bits of kit that you can't go and inspect a site to sell at the moment. We are seeing examples where that is being used.
I think that's a really, really good point. And Roger, your idea about electrically charged taxis and buses in Glasgow on COP26 from our trains, definitely want to chat afterwards. So there you go. Ros, there's one good piece of business come out of this today, which is great. I think that has been really illuminating. I've taken loads of notes myself, actually, Charlotte and Kieron. It's been a really good session. So thank you very much indeed. We are now moving on to our first keynote speaker, who's going to talk about productivity post-pandemic, which is Emma Cooper from Be The Business, graduate of the Cambridge University and, of course, UK Trailblazer. Emma, welcome on board, and I hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen, and morning, everyone. Let me just share my screen and we'll get started on the presentation. I'm aware that I am your final barrier before the break, and everyone's probably desperate for a cup of tea. So the good news is that the presentation is short. As Helen said, the original sort of outline for this discussion was rebuilding post-pandemic. But as Pim said at the very start of the session, we've just launched a partnership with the Silverstone Technology Cluster, which we're really excited about. So I will touch on the impact of the pandemic, but as we're now a partner of STC, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what Be The Business is, what we do, and what we'll be doing in partnership with STC going forward. Give me a moment, just whilst I fix the tech. Okay, so Be The Business is the movement for productivity across the country. And for us, that means more businesses accessing the support they need at the right time and implementing improvements in their business with confidence. So this movement is built by business for business, and we believe that this approach is core to cracking the UK's productivity problem and supporting recovery from the economic impacts of the COVID-19 lockdown. So our approach at Be The Business is to create a cycle of change. We want to engage 1 million business owners across the country through national and regional campaigns. And we want to support these business owners to make the decisions that benefit their business and to capture the opportunities available to these businesses through technology, which has good links in with what we've just heard from Made UK. And I'll touch upon this a bit later about technology adoption being a real place for innovation and opportunity for business. But there's quite a lot of uncertainty about how that can be done. And also we want Britain's leading companies to join the movement with providing reach and expert support and insight to help businesses on the ground in day-to-day decision making. So in the partnership with the Silverstone Technology Cluster, we're going to unpack this whole approach within the cluster's footprint. And with the support of the cluster, we're going to offer business leaders in the area access to our leadership and management and technology adoption programs. We're going to support business leaders to make decisions about their firms and launch campaigns to bring more business leaders into the movement. And the fantastic thing is that this is entirely aligned with STC's ambitions to help businesses grow, succeed, and belong within the cluster. So at this point, you're probably wondering exactly who Be The Business is. So I'm going to take you back a few years to the start of the movement so we can really understand where we've come from. So there's a quote which is often overused and often used out of context from the economist Paul Krugman, but it's a really good place to start for the history of Be the Business. And that quote is, "Productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it is almost everything." And just very simply put, without productivity growth, we would all be living in sort of early Victorian living standards. In economic terms, productivity is the efficiency with which inputs of labour and capital are used, so how much bang for their buck each business can get from their physical and human resources, and ultimately how much bang for its buck the economy gets as a whole. So at the macro level, productivity is at the heart of economic growth, and you'll hear government talking about it a lot, but we believe, and it is genuinely all about the actual decisions that business leaders are taking every day in their business. So when we started, this graph was the real beginnings of our story. And this graph highlights a particularly thorny issue with UK productivity, which is the issue of the long tail. So if you look at the yellow line of this graph, that is the UK. And this line tracks the relative performance of UK firms compared to Germany and France, so two competitor nations. As you can see, the UK is what's been described as a long tail or a wide hump of relatively low productivity businesses. And around 69% of UK employees are working in these below medium productivity firms. Another important thing to note is that if you look to the right, you can see the large tick up. So the UK actually has more highly productive firms than Germany and France right at the top end. So the key question was, why does the UK have so many unproductive firms, and how can they learn from the top performers? So quite simply, how can we improve that diffusion from the very best at the top into the rest and get rid of that long tail or wide hump? So at the time, this question and the issues around the long tail created a real buzz of ideas from leading business organisations, including the Bank of England. Andy Haldane has spoken and done a lot on this, and the CBI. So a key theme across these publications was the relationship between lagging productivity and management practices within firms, especially SME firms, which are classed as having between 10 and 249 employees. So Be the Business started with the publication of a research piece titled "How Good Is Your Business Really?", which was published by the Productivity Leadership Group. And you can see the original membership of the Productivity Leadership Group here. So the whole thing was a brainchild of the former chairman of the John Lewis Partnership, Sir Charlie Mayfield. And Be the Business is the operational arm of the Productivity Leadership Group. The membership of the Productivity Leadership Group are leaders of top British PLC. So you'll see Rolls-Royce here, you'll see GSK, you'll see BAE Systems, Accenture, McKinsey. So some of the real top names in business who came together and made a pledge to support SME businesses across the country in order to shift the long tail. This pledge was matched with funding from central government, and so Be the Business was formed. So since then, we've been growing our membership and our backing from UK PLC, and of which we're really pleased to say that the Silverstone Technology Cluster is our most recent partner. So over the past 3 years, Be the Business has launched and developed a range of activities to support business leaders, focusing on a what works approach to understand how these leaders seek, engage with, and experience support. So these include our university-led programs, Productivity Through People, our Mentoring for Growth program, which links business owners with corporate mentors, and collaborative networks to build peer-to-peer learning. Along with this, there are digital tools to support decision-making, including benchmarking to find your firm productivity, and Be the Business Digital, which supports leaders through the decision-making process behind technology adoption for their business. And this is balanced with our ask from central government, which is to help us to reach those 1 million firms in policy terms, to back technology and innovation for all, and activate regional partners into this agenda. So that's LEPs and growth hubs, combined authorities, in order to build firm capacity. And we've seen this in the 2019 Business Productivity Review, which really set out government's approach to enabling leadership and management adoption in a cyclical way for all businesses within the economy. So we are focused on productivity growth, but we can't really talk about that without touching upon what's happened over the last year and the impact of COVID-19 on our businesses. So the first point that we want to make is that productivity is vital to economic recovery. And that is because economic performance and productivity must be tackled at a firm level. So macro strategies without firm level engagement and impact do not trickle down. And this is hugely pertinent to recovery policy. So we've heard a lot in the spending review about public investment and advanced R&D, and that is fantastic in terms of long-term investment, but will do little to engage and change firms at any scale in any meaningful timeframe of recovery. We need to think about the things that businesses can be doing tomorrow, can be doing next week, can be doing next month in order to make this, especially this next year, which is going to be tough, as smooth and as supportive as possible. Secondly, we need to ensure that we are supporting resilience and capacity building in SMEs and not just financial support. Lessons from the 2018 financial crash showed that financial bailouts for struggling firms can just lock in low performance. And there was a lot of discussion about the emergence of zombie firms after that. So firms which maybe would have failed, they were given a lifeline. They'd never really tackled the fundamental issues in their business and then eventually went on to fail in the longer term. So if we are going to create a strong recovery, we need to balance financial support, which is incredibly important, with resilience and capacity building support. And lastly, risk of economic scarring is a real challenge. We know that business confidence is really low, and businesses predicted that their turnover will still be lower in 3 years' time as a result of the pandemic. So we need to really support business leaders to make challenging decisions, which I'm going to come to in a moment. So over the lockdown, Be The Business has been engaging the business community and learning about the leadership challenges that they've been facing. So we've been doing multiple sort of large-scale surveys throughout this year. And during lockdown, and this is a really, really positive thing, we saw a huge amount of innovation, demonstrating how much potential for adaptation there is within the business community. And in some cases, especially around technology adoption, we saw 3 years of innovation in about 3 months. But we also saw three sort of segments of business leadership emerging. So the innovators who felt that taking action was a bit less risky than staying still. And then on the other side of the fence to that, we've got the stickers. So the people who were like, I'm not going to make any changes until things are a bit more normal. And then in the middle of that, we had the undecided who were really thinking hard about making a change, but didn't know quite how to commit and in what direction to go. So to help businesses in all of these segments, Be The Business built the Rebuild platform to support with key business themes of business model, finance, employees, technology, suppliers, and leadership. And we use lived experience, and this is what we do across everything. We use real life stories to bring these issues to life, and have worked with the cluster to bring in insights on employee wellbeing to a wider audience. And this was the starting point for developing this partnership. Be The Business Rebuild is free to all business leaders, so you can find this resource on bethebusiness.com. And as the pandemic, hopefully, in the next few months comes to an end and we look at the kind of economic recovery, we're going to continue to support businesses to reopen and rebuild to support this recovery, maintaining a focus on leadership management and technology adoption. So just a little bit more about what we're going to be doing in partnership with the Silverstone Technology Cluster. So firstly, why did we partner with STC? What were we looking for? Well, firstly, for us, a regional focus on productivity is vital because it's linked to economic equality across the country, which, as we know, is a huge priority. And we've seen the government start to really move on the levelling up agenda. So the STC's strong geographic footprint really make them a perfect partner to deliver the right support to the right businesses. Be The Business, we're a small organisation, we're a campaign organisation. We don't want to be the kind of front line on the ground. We want to work with the people who've already got all of this stuff in place. As I've said as well, that diffusion is key and therefore local is key. So we need to work out how to get innovation strategies that spread across all businesses, and that's utterly essential now. So working with STC is going to be really important for that because obviously we've got such a fantastic cluster ready-made. And we've already heard examples of how diffusion and sharing of best practice is happening. So we want to really maximise that. And thirdly, there's just unprecedented interest for change at the moment. And as we've all seen, we've all become digital. We're all online over this past year in ways which we probably would never have expected. And business leaders across the board have been trying out new business models, wanting to do things differently, trying to think about how they can support their staff in new ways. So we know that crisis drives innovation, and in order to reach all the businesses that need help, we need to work with organisations that already have a strong presence within business communities and are committed to supporting business improvement, which obviously STC is. It's right at the core of what they do. So as a trailblazer, STC is going to be joint partners such as the West of England Combined Authority, the Midlands Engine, the University of Hull. And these are the kind of things that we're going to be doing. So the partnership activities will include digital campaigns built on an SME insight, senior executive leadership from our corporate fellows, and these include people like the CTO of BAE Systems, the former executive director of Maury Harcourt up in Leeds, Veronica Hope-Haley from the University of Bath. So real business leaders who bring real credibility and real insight to the movement in this area. Delivery of our Mentoring for Growth program, which connect SMEs with corporate business mentors, advisory boards, which provide board level and long-term strategic thinking for SMEs who might not have the opportunity as a leader to kind of really get that sounding board, an accredited leadership pathway to build leadership skills, and importantly, case studies and research. And this is about demonstrating the value of the partnership. We are committed to evaluating everything we do. We want to make sure it works. We want to communicate that back to central government so they understand the value of these kinds of activities too. So that's going to be a really key part of what we're doing with STC. And just importantly, we know this stuff works, and these findings have come from our most recent evaluation on mentoring. So where businesses have been involved with us, we've found that they've been making changes and making improvements, including improving their company structure, developing a clearer company vision, developing new marketing strategies and business cases, doing things around pay and retention, and maybe most crucially, creating new job opportunities. So we are absolutely delighted to be working with STC. It's a really, really exciting opportunity, and I personally look forward to finding out more about the businesses involved with the cluster. We've already had a couple of people reaching out to me on LinkedIn, which is fantastic. So if you'd like to find out more about Be the Business, I'm very happy to take your questions now. Hopefully I won't just drop off the internet if I get a difficult question. I promise I won't. You can find out more on www.bethebusiness.com. But yes, at this point, I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Emma. That was great. And there's actually been a lot of questions about how do we engage with you, how do we work out how we can helicopter in some skills, etc. So I think you've just covered that. So, and I think also it'll be sent out after this event to actually give you some more details, which is great. So I think that was the main term of the question. So thank you, Emma, for coming back on and helping us with that. I think if we now move on to the third